YouTube, what's going on? It's James with Make an Opening, and today we are covering a brand new deck list. I know I just did Leia a couple videos ago, but I saw this deck list on the Star Wars Unlimited Reddit, and I could not pass up the opportunity to cover this deck. The graphic does not tell any lies. This is a $10 mono green Leia deck tech. It's made by Fudgy, who we actually have in a Discord call today to go over the deck tech with us. Say hello, Fudgy.
Hello.
That's him right there. And today we're going to go over the list. I'll leave his deck list from SWDB down in the description below. And it actually does have a really well-written, in-depth write-up as well, going over the main game plan, the entire combo and the purpose of this deck, how you're going to get out a bunch of damage, sideboard options, all that good stuff. And yeah, so let's go ahead and just get into it. So with the $10 deck list, the first thing I saw whenever I pulled this deck list up on Reddit was the fact that it was like $10. I was like, okay, I have to look at it. I have to build it myself. I've opened 2 boxes and I made the entire deck, right then and there. I'm not missing any cards. And it looks like the only reason it is $10 is because R2 is $2 a pop. But tell me what's like your overall thoughts about the deck before we go into like a card by card analysis.
So I think this deck's awesome. It's really resilient. It's got a really good focused game plan. It uses a lot of units that are just kind of really budget, really commons and uncommons that you can just throw together if you've opened a box or 2 or bought a common uncommon set. I really love the synergies too. There's a lot of synergy in the deck and in the Rebels tribe in general. So yeah, really excited to talk about it.
Oh yeah, it's a super good deck. Again, I built it last night when I was scrolling through Reddit, and I played a couple games, by myself. I did some on Force Table. I think I did 1 or 2 on tabletop with some of the late night grinders in one of the Discords I'm in, and it actually plays out really well. So the first thing that I like to cover on these deck techs is the leader and the base. The leader and the base, I mean, at this point, everyone knows ECL is by far and away probably the best rare base that we have in the game. Is there a reason that you went for ECL versus a typical 30 health base in this deck list?
ECL is really for the synergy with Steadfast Battalion. It's pretty much a known combo at this point.
Oh, yeah.
But on turn 5, when you're able to deploy Leia, you can also, play a Steadfast Battalion with an ECL to overwhelm one of your opponent's bigger units, usually like a Sentinel or something if it's in the way.
Yeah.
And it's pushes a lot of damage, and oftentimes that's the advantage you need to kind of to end the game. So ECL is pretty critical, especially because we're going fast too. We're not really looking to outlast opponents with this deck. It's all about speed, so ECL helps with that a lot too.
Of course. And then, like you mentioned with Leia, she does come out on turn. Oh, well, I guess she comes out on turn 4, right? Because with 5 resources.
5 resources, yeah.
But turn 4, turn 5, whenever you want to play out Leia, when she comes out, she is a very big deal. And the turn that she comes out, the opponent definitely has to be careful and look out for not only her but all the other units on the board because of her leader ability in general. Whenever she's a leader, she exhausts herself to basically action cheat and attack with multiple units at a time. And then whenever she's on the field as well, she gets raid 1. And then whenever she attacks, you attack with other rebel units. So that turns on a lot of action cheating as well as a really critical combo in the deck as well. So what has you playing Leia in over maybe like going for a cheaper like Sabine deck list? Do you just find Leia more enjoyable, or what's your thought process going on that?
I think when you're playing a deck like this game plan's all about swarming the board.
Yes.
And you want to maintain some initiative during that as well. So Leia really helps with that aspect of it. Whereas Sabine, I feel like falls behind in initiative because of her abilities. So Leia really synergizes with. We want to get a lot of units out there. We want to be attacking with them. Her tap ability is great. And she hits just as hard as a Boba. She hits at 4 when she's attacking, and that's a lot of damage. So she's really synergistic with the overall swarm game plan and helps us maintain that initiative.
Oh yeah, and with the 6 HP, that keeps her out of range of a lot of pretty key removal cards when you're going up against blue decks as well. So
yeah, no takedowns for her.
Yeah, no takedowns. So the first thing we're going to go over is our ground unit package. We're just going to go card by card. If you have a lot to say about each card. You can, if it's just like, oh, it's there because XYZ, we can go through them as fast as you want. But first up in the 1-cost slot, we have Alliance Dispatcher. It's a 1/2, and you exhaust it to play a unit from your hand that costs 1 less. So any thoughts on Alliance Dispatcher at all?
Yeah, it's nice because it's an early rebel, and it does help you double spell later.
Yeah.
So that's kind of why it's there. I would love if its stat line was better.
Yeah.
But it's it's the card pool we've got, so Alliance Dispatcher fits right in and helps out with the rebel strategy.
And the extra 1-drops, R2 we'll probably go over is actually a pretty good card in the deck, but Alliance and Vanguard, they're more so there in order to help you establish a pretty good early game board and you more effectively swarm your opponent, if I'm not mistaken, because you want to have, if you can get 2 1-drops on the field on turn 1, then that's actually a really good tempo for this deck.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, and Vanguard Infantry is kind of that ideal follow-up 1-drop to either the other two, because if they hit you with a Power of the Dark Side, which is really kind of bad against this deck, you just make a 2/5 R2 or a 2/3 Alliance Dispatcher, and it works out really well for you.
Yeah. So yeah, going into the next card, R2D2, it's a 1/4, so a really big body, pretty hard to remove early on in the game, and it has a really nice when played and on attack ability. Is that one of the reasons that you have it in the deck?
Yeah, it's kind of it serves like 4 purposes. R2's kind of crazy.
Yeah.
So a 1/4 unit's really tough to remove, especially just for 1 resource. I think it's the most stats on any 1 resource card. There is. I think the close second is Death Star Stormtrooper.
Yeah.
It's got the most stats. Its when played helps you really filter towards either your combo or more gas. And the amount of times that I've played R2, seen an R2 on top, and said, I don't need that, throw it on the bottom, it's great. I mean, I smile every time that happens. It feels like you're drawing a card. The other things that it does is that 1/4 Rebel Body is really good at carrying experience counters, and really, really good at being a target for Fleet Lieutenant as well, if you're looking to trade. Well, not even trade, just kind of get an advantage on the board, because he'll usually stick around.
Oh, yeah. And then we already touched on Vanguard Infantry, a 1/2. When it's defeated, if they have to remove something, you can just pop an experience token on R2 or Alliance Dispatcher. They're both pretty good options to carry those experience counters. R2D2 more so, of course. But then we have Battlefield Marine. It's a 2-cost 3/3. This is just good stats. Rebel, heroic cards. Probably the main reason he's in here. There's not too much to talk about with Battlefield Marine.
Yep, there's nothing wrong with a good Battlefield.
Yeah. The next up, C3PO. It's a 2-cost 1/4. So again, a nice big body. And then another really great when played on attack ability, where you choose a number, then look at the top card of your deck. If its cost is the chosen number, you may reveal and draw it. Otherwise, you leave it on top. So when you're playing C3PO, is there a specific number that you find yourself calling out more than others? Is it like probably 2 or 3 in this deck?
Yeah, it's the deck's even on 2s and 3s for you to hit, so you can choose whichever you feel like you'd rather see.
Right.
And he does combo with R2, so if you do have an R2 on 1 and it's on top, you can C3PO and draw that card.
Yeah.
So it's nice. It's a little synergistic, and honestly, he's a 1/4 Rebel, which is another big reason why we play him.
Super big. And next up, Mon Mothma, 2-cost 1/3. When played, you get to search the top 5 cards of your deck for a Rebel card, reveal it, and draw it. In one of my previous Leia videos, I did mention that I was running Mon Mothma as well. My favorite target to hit with Mon Mothma is actually Rebel Assault, just because even though it's an event, it is a Rebel event, and it is key when you're playing Leia. Other than Rebel Assault, do you have any favorite targets to hit when you're using Mon Mothma?
Honestly, it's just best to hit a follow-up play.
Yeah.
I've found if you can hit an R2 off of Mon Mothma, and then you follow it up with an R2. It's really solid. It really helps the deck churn and play that kind of card advantage game, which is why when talking about this deck, it's really resilient to that removal. It really helps you keep your cards keep the cards flowing.
Oh yeah. And then the last 2 resource ground unit is Rebel Pathfinder. Just a solid 2/3 with Saboteur as well to help you get in that extra damage towards the base. Pop shields if you're going up against any like Shields Matter decks, like if you're going up against a Luke deck. It can help you pop those pesky shields that they're stacking on one of their units like a Yoda. But yeah, 2 cost 2/3 Saboteur, pretty good card. Any other thing to say about Rebel Pathfinder at all?
I just think Saboteur is underrated. I think Saboteur is awesome. Getting past Sentinels as well is a big deal a lot of times in this deck, and it's oftentimes a target you want to buff to just get in damage. So it's nice.
The amount of times I've lost games to not only just Rebel Pathfinder, but just other cards in general that have Saboteur, or it's like a event or an upgrade that gives a unit Saboteur and then just goes into my base and beat me. I feel like Saboteur is extremely strong in the right situations, and not a whole lot of people are utilizing Saboteur as much as they should, in my opinion. It's super, super good. But now we got some three costs. We have Echo Base Defender and Fleet Lieutenant. Echo Base, you see it in every single heroic green deck. It's a 4/3 for 3 with Sentinel. It's just a nice big body to keep out there on the field. And then Fleet Lieutenant is pretty much like the staple of all staples. It's 3 for 3/3. And then when you played, you may attack with the unit. And if it's a rebel, it gets +2/+0 for this attack. Most, if not every single card in the deck is rebels. Vanguard Infantry is not, and Steadfast Battalion isn't. And then Consortium Star Viper also is not a rebel, but it's just those 3 units. The rest, they're all rebels. So Fleet Lieutenant works really well in this deck. Any like particular targets for Fleet Lieutenant, or just like you see a target, you see a way to get in to do a favorable trade? Is that more so how you use Fleet Lieutenant in this deck?
Yeah, I use Fleet Lieutenant a lot of the time for board control. Sometimes they'll just play like a 3/2 or a 2/3, and you'll be sitting on a C3PO or an R2, and just throwing them in, getting a favorable trade, maintaining your board. That's how I use it a lot of the time. You can also use it for strictly base damage, and it's great for that too.
Yeah.
A lot of the time, the best use cases is when you kind of get that gotcha trade off of a 1/4.
Oh yeah. And then we have the big man. We have General Dodonna. This guy, especially in this deck, when only 3 of your cards aren't rebels, giving every other rebel card +1/+1 is huge. You get some cards out of reach from lethal damage. Some cards are not able to be taken out with removal spells whenever General Dodonna's on the field. He requires an answer like as soon as you play him. He's just insane in rebel decks. Anything to add there other than like glazing him for being like super strong?
He's awesome. Well, I've had situations playing this deck where you have a couple units on 1 or 2 health, and they're looking like they're gonna get removed, and then you slam a Dodonna, and they just have to deal with him. He's great. He's a lightning rod. He does everything he says on the tin. So yeah, I love Dodonna.
Oh yeah. And especially like even with Fleet Lieutenant, going back to him, like you can use General Dodonna in order to create favorable trades for yourself. If you just need that 1 extra HP in order to take out a unit and not lose your own to keep your own board state, General Dodonna comes into great use and great effect in that situation as well. And then the top of the curve here, we have Steadfast Battalion. He is a 5/5/5 overwhelm, and then on attack, if you control a leader unit, give a friendly unit +2/+2 for this phase. Whenever you do the on attack, you can target himself. It is, and like you said at the beginning, it is a very well-known combo with ECL at this point in time. So I'm sure that whenever you use Steadfast Battalion, you're typically targeting himself with the on attack trigger, aren't you?
Yeah, typically, unless there's a unit you can save from an on board. From something on board, and it's pretty much the only target you really want to hit with ECL.
Yeah.
I've noticed, sometimes you think a card we're going to talk about in a little bit, like Consortium Star Viper. You think you want that restore, but it's not nearly as strong as just hitting them with a Steadfast and saving it.
Oh yeah.
It's pretty much always worth saving ECL for Steadfast Battalion.
Oh yeah. So that's the ground package. When it comes to the space units, we don't have, a whole ton of units in here. We have 3 3-ofs. We have Alliance X-Wing, Consortium Star Viper, and Wing Leader. But they all play their part in different ways, of course. Alliance X-Wing is a solid early game rebel ship to have in the space arena. Consortium Star Viper, like you just mentioned, it's a 3 3/3 with Restore 2 as long as you have initiative. And a lot of people do like to use Consortium Star Viper as a ECL, a ECL card, because if the opponent doesn't have initiative, you take it, they play like a Green Squadron A-Wing at the beginning of the game, you take initiative and then you ECL out a Consortium Star Viper to not only take out the unit and keep your Consortium Star Viper, but you're also healing. But after the first turn or two, you're not really taking a whole lot of damage at that point anyway.
Yeah, and oftentimes with Leia, you're pressuring with enough units that they need to trade into your units, even if they're an aggressive deck, because you have a combo they're not going to see coming.
Yeah, so. And the combo is disgusting. And then Wing Leader, it's your 3-cost, 2/1, another Rebel fighter. The main reason he is in the deck is because of these experience tokens for another friendly Rebel. +2/+2 is great, especially when you're setting up a big turn for your combo. Wing Leader does a whole lot of work to getting those damage numbers up and up and up. So any other mention for Wing Leader at all?
Nah, love Wing Leader. Any of your high health units definitely give those experience counters too. It helps everything else stick around, and there's something nice about space and lane dodging and all that too, because those units stay around often longer than they should. So.
Yeah, very true. And now for the events that we have the 0-cost Medal Ceremony. You do get to give an experience token to each of up to 3 rebels that attack this phase. Do you have any specific details as to why you're running Medal Ceremony? A lot of people that I've spoken with, and then even in comment sections of videos and Reddit, a lot of people are I feel like people are 50-50 on this card. A lot of people love it in Rebel decks, and a lot of people feel like it's just too slow because it takes up an entire action. But I feel like with Leia, since you're going to be attacking with a lot of units anyway, Medal Ceremony has a pretty good fit in at least Leia decks.
Yeah, I think Leia is definitely the best home for Medal Ceremony. She mitigates the action, the action economy loss that you get on having to play it by just letting you attack with 2 units at the same time. Mm. And honestly, the main thing with Medal Ceremony is don't be afraid to play it on 1 or even 2 units. It's a 0 resource card, but as long as it's helping your units stick around for your big turns, it's doing its job.
Oh yeah.
So yeah, if you R2 and then get it on anything else, it's pretty much doing its job. A 2/5 is so hard to remove. Even a 3/4, they take a lot of resources to remove. So it's really just helpful for setup. Sometimes you can get all 3, but I wouldn't be greedy about it. I think if it's a 0-cost +2/+2, that's better on rate than what any of the other green cards are doing. So.
Yeah, definitely. And then for the last 2 cards in the deck, this is basically the combo package right here. It's Rebel Assault and Attack Pattern Delta. And then, this deck is built around this combo specifically with Leia as well. If you want to sort of, take the viewers, the listeners through what the combo is going to look like on the turn that you play Leia.
Sure. So you kind of want to begin by deploying Leia with 2 other rebels in play. With that setup, you let your opponent take their action, and then you play Attack Pattern Delta, trying to buff in a way that makes your units difficult to remove. So, if you have a unit on 1 health, give that the +3, etc. Just get them to a place where they're going to live for your opponent's next action, and then you play Rebel Assault on 1 rebel and Leia, and then you use Leia's attack ability to attack with that 3rd rebel, and it usually does anywhere from 12 to 16 damage depending on how good your setup is.
Oh yeah.
Which if you've dealt 9 damage to a base, that ends the game.
Yep.
And I find it really does. It's really good to end the game on turn 5. It's before anyone can really hit you with a super laser blast or anything that's really going to be devastating to a deck like this.
Yeah.
And the other thing is it really does work even if you just have 1 other rebel. Mm-hmm. +5/+5 on Attack Pattern Delta across 2 units, and then Rebel Assaulting is actually still pretty good.
Yeah.
You just kind of go down that extra 1 damage. So it really does pull its weight in this deck, especially with just how many units you're swarming with and how much damage you should be doing to the base every turn.
Oh yeah. And like you mentioned before, other aggro decks into this Leia mono green deck, they're more so looking to trade with your units because, you know, they don't want you to be swarming the board. Eventually, your units are going to require an answer. But with your game plan, do you ever focus on trading out with their units, or do you just always swing for base? That way, when you hit your turn 5-6 resource combo, you are able to get lethal damage in.
I mean, I won't say no to a free trade, you know. So if I can get a fleet lieutenant on an R2 and take out something with three health, I'll do it.
Yeah.
But you really don't want to sacrifice your units to do that.
Oh yeah.
You want to make them use their actions to get your units. So if you're in a situation where you could trade or you could go base and it's going to cost you units, just go to base. That's definitely the recommended play pattern.
Oh yeah. And then last but not least, we have a little bit of a sideboard package here. I usually never put the sideboard packages in. I let the viewers, you know, click the deck list and go look. But the sideboard is pretty cool, especially because it is the only rare unit in the entire deck list is in the sideboard, and it's 3 copies of Akbar. We also have 3 copies of Homestead Militia, Colonel Yularen, and then 1 of the extra Vanguard Infantries as well. Do you have any specific you know, adds and removals for specific matchups with the sideboard at all? Have you gotten enough experience with this deck to know what to sideboard going into specific matchups yet?
I think that there's sometimes a reason to side out Consortium Star Viper for Akbar. That's kind of been my my MO. If they're really not in space very often, Akbar plays a really nice role as a kind of dual removal card, an extra rebel. You know, he's a 1/4, so he does a lot of what the deck wants.
Right.
Yularen's there in case you're getting outpaced by a Sabine, if it's like an aggression Sabine or Sabine Green. Sometimes they can get you with a couple of their burn cards, K2SO and all that. Yularen helps us kind of hedge in that matchup. So I'd put him in for a couple of the Vanguard Infantry just to maintain your rebel density.
Right.
Homestead Militia, it's there if they're playing a lot of ways to deal 3 damage to your units. If there's a lot of those, you might want to put that in instead of an Echo-based defender and just take some of the action economy loss.
Okay.
Because it's bigger booty helps it out with all the trading that can go on.
Oh yeah, of course. So yeah, that's the deck. Do you have any, you know, specific guys when it comes to you know, early game mulligans at least? Anything that you want to see in your opening hand? That way, if you don't see it, you typically pitch it to mulligan to look for it. Do you have any cards that you just need in your opening hand?
I find that you really want to start off with one of either Attack Pattern Delta or Steadfast Battalion to guarantee that you have it on 5. The deck loses a lot of steam if you're not able to do that.
Right.
So if you don't naturally draw into it, you really want to look for those, and of course keep something playable. You know, a 1-drop, maybe a couple 2-drops. That's about where you want to be to start off with your mulligans. The other thing to look for is you really don't want to resource Steadfast Battalion or Attack Pattern Delta or Rebel Assault a lot of the time, because they are they are what makes the deck tick. So
right.
don't get it confused. Even though they're the highest cost cards in your hand, you will need them.
Yeah, at some point you will play them. And yeah, again, this deck, it's as crazy as it sounds, it is a $10 deck, and it is, you know, quite competitive as well, especially with just aggro swarm based decks in general. It's very strong. It's a lot of fun as well. I just personally have more fun playing Leia over Sabine or even like Cassian, stuff like that. Leia is just super fun with her, you know, ability as a leader, and whenever she's deployed, just, you know, cheating out that much damage and turns is so much fun. And $10, again, this is not clickbait, this is not a scam, it's $10. R2D2, it makes up $6. The rest of the cards, you know, it's upwards of $4 or $5 for literally 47 cards. ECL, don't really know how much ECL goes for at the moment. And then, you know, the Leia leader, you probably get the entire deck just from your local game store. I know me personally at our game store, a lot of the extra play sets of commons and uncommons, after opening a couple boxes, we've all just been giving to our local game store. That way new players can come in, build decks, and play with them. So if your local game store is doing similar things, you could realistically just walk in and build this deck exactly how it is and have a bunch of fun with it. Any closing remarks when it comes to this super budget Leia combo deck that you've crafted?
No, I hope you have fun. I hope it gets you some packs at your locals. So thanks for having me on.
Of course. And again, this is James with Make an Opening. This has been Fudgy as well. If he makes any more really cool decks in the future, I'll be sure to bring him back on. Super cool to talk to, and you're very informative with your deck list. And then we'll see you guys in the next video. Peace out, everybody.